संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, and the best of all incarnations, we salute thee. In the last reading class, we left at page 421. Today, we shall continue from there. We shall repeat a part of the para 9.2 so that we shall know where we had the subject, what we are discussing, and we shall proceed. Secondly, the doctrines of dualism, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism came of themselves to each man with his spiritual progress. The Master, therefore, said that they were not contradictory to one another, but depended on particular stages of evolution of the human mind. A little thinking makes it clear what immense help man can derive in understanding the vast religious literature through this realization of the Master. Words cannot express adequately what an endless confusion has been produced and how intricate the path to spirituality has been rendered by the three aforesaid doctrines discovered by the Acharyas and Rishis and recorded in the Vedas, Upanishads and other scriptures. Unable to find out their proper harmony with one another, the followers of each of these doctrines, that is Dvaita, Advaita and Vishishtha Advaita, did their best to prove by torturing the test that all of them preached the doctrine as interpreted by them. The result of that attempt of the commentators is that there arises a dread in the minds of the people at the very name of religious discussions for the determination of Shastric truths. And this fear has produced a lack of faith in the Shastras, leading to the spiritual degradation of India. It was therefore necessary for the Master, the incarnation of the age, to realize all the three doctrines in different stages of his own life and propagate among all men their wonderful harmony. The only way that will lead us to the understanding of the Shastras is to remember always this conclusion of the Master. Remember what the Master said on this topic. No, the non-dual state of the consciousness is the ultimate one to be realized. It is a realization that is beyond mind and speech. Only the states up to qualified non-dualism can be understood by mind and intellect and expressed in words. In that state, both the absolute and the relative are equally eternal. The Lord Himself, His name and His abode, all are pure consciousness. This is the realization of Sri Ramakrishna. For ordinary human beings in whom the attachment to worldly objects prevails, dualism is commendable. For them, the loud singing of the Lord's name, His glory, His powers, etc., as directed in the Narada Pancharatra, is advisable. The Master puts limits to the performance of actions also for the spiritual development of man, and said the actions of a man with the predominance of sattva naturally drop off. He cannot perform them in spite of his efforts to do so. To put it in another way, God does not allow him to do so. God, take for example, a householder's daughter-in-law. The more she approaches a confinement, the more do her household duties drop off. And when the child is born, she has nothing more to do except nurse it. But all other people should depend on God and perform all actions like the maid servant in a rich man's family in the parable. What is that maid servant in the rich man's family? It is said in the footnote. A maid servant serves in a rich man's family, attends carefully to all her duties, takes care of all the articles of the house, brings up the children as her own, fondles them, suckles them, behaves with other people and families in a manner befitting a member of the family, and she serves and even quarrels with others for the sake of the family. But she knows all the while that she is not one of the family, and yet the word from the master or the mistress is enough to send her away from there, and that a real home and her own people are at a far off village. She always bears in mind, at the same time she behaves as if she belongs to the family. Similarly, O man of the world, live in the world, mix with the members of your family and serve them as dutifully as you can. But know in your heart of heart that they are none of yours, and that your home and your real relatives are there in the kingdom of heaven. God being the very center of them all, their life and their being. This is reproduced from Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So, guide the servant in a rich man's family in the parable. To perform actions in this way is what is called Karma Yoga. To repeat continuously God's name together with meditation on Him, and to perform all actions in the aforesaid manner is the path, the correct path of Karma Yoga. The master realized that as an instrument in the hands of the Mother of the universe, he would have to found a new communion, especially for the liberal faith revealed in his own life. The master realized all this during the lifetime of Mathur Babu. The mother told him, he said to Mathur, that many devotees would come to him to attain spirituality. It is superfluous to add that it turned out to be literally true. Once at the Kashipur garden, the master looked at his own photograph and said to us, "This is a picture showing a very high state of yoga. It will be worshipped hereafter in every house." It means the photograph in the sitting posture of the master in Samadhi. It is very common in all our Ramakrishna temples and the prayer homes. So he showed that one and then said that this is the picture very high state of yoga, and it will be worshipped hereafter in every house. Those who are in their last life will accept his doctrine. He also says about this, having known with the help of his yogic power that those who were in their last birth would come to him to attain spirituality. He had quite a firm conviction about it. We have given the reader our own opinion about it elsewhere. It is therefore needless to repeat it here. Three eminent sadhaka pandits, well versed in the scriptures, came to the master during three important periods of his sadhana, saw with their own eyes his spiritual states, and had the opportunity of having discussions on them. The opinions expressed by three eminent sadhakas, well versed in the Shastras, on seeing the master, is being described now. Pandit Padmalochan saw the master after the latter had attained perfection in the tantric practices. Pandit Vaishnavacharan met him after his success in the Vaishnava disciples, and Pandit Gauri had the privilege of seeing the master possessed of the divine splendor produced by the sadhana when the latter had finished all his spiritual practices. Padmalochan saw the master and said, "I see in you divine power and manifestation." Composing a hymn in Sanskrit, Vaishnavacharan sang to the master in ecstasy, describing him as an incarnation of God. Similarly, Gauri, when he saw the master, said to him, "I see tangibly realized in you all the high spiritual states recorded in the scriptures read by me. Besides, I see in you the manifestation of such exalted states as are not recorded in them. Your state has far transcended those mentioned in the Vedas, Vedanta, and the Shastras. You are not a mortal being. The reality from which incarnations originate is there in you." When we study the extraordinary story of the Master's life and his wonderful experiences mentioned before, we can clearly comprehend that those prominent sadhaka pandits did not speak the aforesaid words by way of flattery. The dates of the coming to Dakshineshwar of the scholars have been ascertained in the following way. The time of the coming of the Pandits. While she was staying at Dakshineshwar for the first time, the Holy Mother saw Pandit Gauri there. Again, we were told by the Master that the Pandit came to Dakshineshwar when Mathur Babu was alive. Therefore, he seems to have come to Dakshineshwar sometime in 1871 and stayed with the Master till 1873. The Master always cherished a desire to see those sadhaka pandits who tried to practice the scriptural knowledge acquired by them in their lives. As Bhattacharya Sri Gauri Kanta Tarkabhushan, that was the full name of Pandit Gauri, belonged to this class of sadhakas. The Master had the desire to see him and had him brought to Dakshineshwar through Mathur, who invited him to come there. The Pandit was an inhabitant of the village of Indesh, near the Master's birthplace. Hriday's brother Ramratan went with Mathur's letter Mathur's letter of invitation to Gaurikanta and brought him to the holy temple at Dakshineshwar. We have elsewhere told the reader about the wonderful power which came to him from his sadhana and the way in which he renounced the world after he came to Dakshineshwar, saw the Master and had intense detachment growing gradually in his heart. The date of the Annameru, the gift of mountain of food has been ascertained to be 1864. We have elsewhere told the reader about the wonderful power which came to him from his sadhana and the way in which he renounced the world after he came to Dakshineshwar, saw the master and had intense detachment growing gradually in his heart. The date of Annameru, the gift of mountain of food, has been ascertained to be 1864 in the book entitled The Story of the Life of Rani Rasmani. We were told by the master about the eagerness of Mathur to have Padmalochan brought to Dakshineshwar by invitation and to make him accept gifts at that time. Therefore, the year 1864 may be said to be the time when Bhattacharya Sri Padmalochan Tarkalankar, the Vedantic scholar, came to the master. The time when Vaishnavacharan, the son of Utsavananda Goswami, came to Dakshineshwar can easily be ascertained, for we have heard from the master about his discussion at Dakshineshwar of the supernal nature of the master, at first with Yogeshwari, the Bhairavi Brahmani, and afterwards with Gaurikanta Tarkabhushan, etc. Like the Brahmani, Vaishnavacharan saw manifested in the master's mind and body all the signs of Mahabhava spoken of in the Vaishnava scriptures. And he got lost in astonishment and agreed with the Bhairavi in her conclusion that the above mentioned words of the master, that master was the incarnation of Gauranga. When one hears about the above mentioned words of the master, it becomes clear to one that Vaishnavacharan came to the master in 1865 after the latter had become perfected in the discipline of the Madhura Bhava. Vaishnavacharan frequented Dakshineshwar now and then till 1873. The master's desire to see the devotees of the inner circle. As he was inspired by God, a new and strong desire arose in the mind of the master after he had the experiences mentioned before. He became very anxious to meet his devotees previously seen in his yogic visions and to impart his own power of spirituality to them. That anxiety, said the master, had no limit. With great difficulty, I put up with that constant anxiety throughout the day, hearing the worldly topics of the worldly people which really seemed to be poison to me. I used to think when they would all come, I would have pleasant conversations on God with them, which would pacify my mind and heart and refresh my ears. I would then tell them my own spiritual experiences. It is all the imagination of the master. My own spiritual experiences and lighten the burden of my heart. The idea of their coming got associated with everything in and around me and led me to think incessantly of them. I kept myself in readiness regarding what I should say or give to each one of them. When the day ended and evening came, I could no longer control that surge of anxiety by any amount of patience. The thought arose that another day has passed away and none of them had come. When the temples rang with sounds of conchs, proprietors being restless on account of the anguish of my heart, I called out at the top of my voice and with tears in my eyes, "Where are thou, my children? Do come, one and all. I cannot do any more without seeing you." And I filled the quarters with loud cries. So great were my anxiety and restlessness that it is doubtful whether a mother desires so intensely to meet her child. Nor had I ever heard of a pair of lovers or friends behaving that way in order to be united with each other. A few days after this, the devotees began to come one by one. A few important events took place before the devotees came to Dakshineshwar. At that anxious call of the Master, as they are not directly connected with the present part of the book, we record them as an appendix. These are some important events. It is interesting to know about Sri Ramakrishna's life. The death of Rameshwar. Rameshwar is second brother. We have told that the reader that the Holy Mother came back to Kamarpukur in the month of October 1873 after the worship of Shodashi. Shortly after her arrival there, Rameshwar, the second elder brother of the Master, died of typhoid. Spirituality in some form or other was manifest in the life of each man and woman belonging to the Master's paternal lineage. We have heard many things illustrative of this in regard to Rameshwar. Rameshwar's charitable nature. Rameshwar was a man of very liberal nature. He would give unhesitatingly to sannyasins and fakirs coming to his door whatever they asked for, provided it was there in the house. We were told by his relatives that fakirs used to come and want many things. One, a cooking pot, another, a water pot, a third, a blanket, and so on. And Rameshwar brought them all out of the house and gave them away to them. If any member of the house raised an objection, he calmly said, "Let them take them. Do not say anything. Many such articles we shall have again. Why do you bother?" Rameshwar had some knowledge of astrology also. The Master's prescience of Rameshwar's death. When Rameshwar was going home from Dakshineshwar for the last time, the Master knew that he would not have to return from there, and in an ecstasy said to Rameshwar himself, "You are going home, I see. Go, but do not share bed with your wife. If you do so, it is doubtful whether you will survive." One of us heard this from the Master himself later. Thinking that the life of his mother would be in danger, when Rameshwar passes away, Sri Ramakrishna got the apprehension. The news is given to his mother, what would happen? Shortly after Rameshwar reached home, word came that he was ill. When the Master heard it, he said to Hriday, he did not obey the prohibition. It is doubtful whether his life will be saved. After 5 or 6 days, the news came that Rameshwar had passed away. The Master was much afraid that the news of the death of her son would be a great shock to his aged mother, who was staying with Sri Ramakrishna. He went to the temple and prayed plaintively to the Universal Mother to save her from grief. Then the master went with tears in his eyes, we were told by himself, from the temple to Nahabat to break the news and console his mother. The master said, I was afraid that mother would completely lose her consciousness on hearing it and was doubtful whether her life would be saved. But in fact, the contrary happened. Mother heard the news, expressed a little grief, and started consoling me, saying, the world is transitory. Did everyone die? Die everyone must some day. It is therefore useless to grieve, and so on. It seemed to me that the Divine Mother had turned her mind to a high pitch, like a tanpura keyed up to a very high note, and that was why worldly grief and sorrow could not touch her. When I noticed this one, I saluted the Divine Mother again and again and became free from anxiety. Rameshwar knew the behavior of Rameshwar when he knew that death was near at hand. Rameshwar knew the time of his death 5 or 6 days before the event took place. He told his relatives of it and made all preparations for his obsequies and the Shraddha ceremony. Seeing a mango tree in front of the house being cut down for some reason, he said, it's good, that would be of use in my funeral rites. He uttered the holy name of Sri Ramchandra till his last moments. He lay unconscious only for a short while before he passed away. Before his death, Rameshwar requested his relatives not to cremate his body in the burning ground, but to bury it on the road by it. Asked the reason for it, he said, I shall attain a high heaven by virtue of the touch of the dust of the many sadhus' feet treading the road. Rameshwar died at dead of night. So this is how this story of Rameshwar ends. So we shall stop here and continue our reading class in our next session. Niranjanam nityam anantarupam bhaktanukampadhrita vigraham vai Jishavataram parameshamidhyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namama. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed a form out of compassion to the devotees, the incarnate Supreme Soul and the adorable Lord of all, we salute, bowing our heads to Thee.